Welcome to Missing Briefs, where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers, their triumphs, and their trials. I'm Dominic Grew, the owner and founder of Elevate Business Coaching, a Boston based firm specializing in working with law firms and their lawyers to build, manage, and grow successful practices.
And I'm Bob Furlong. I'm a certified exit planner here in Boston. I help managing partners implement strategies to attract and retain their best associates. This creates a clear path for their own successful retirement and eventual exit.
So, Missing Briefs, what's it all about? Well, essentially, it's about exploring and telling the compelling stories or briefs of lawyers who have experienced significant challenges and successes in the business of law. What was their gap? What were they missing? What do they wish that they had known? Well, it's our pleasure today to welcome Mike Walsh. Mike is the founder and owner of Workers' Comp and Social Security Law Group, a Boston, Massachusetts-based firm exclusively helping workers and their families navigate the complexities of workers' comp and social security. Mike, how are you doing today?
Excellent, Dom. Excellent. And Bob, thank you very much for having me today. I'm honored and kind of thrilled to be here. So thank you.
That's great. Michael, you have a really interesting story in your work and an interesting practice area in the law. So let's get started by going a little bit back in time, back to the beginning. So the first thing I'd love to ask or find out from you would be when did you first decide, hey, you know what, I want to become an attorney as opposed to anything else?
I would say it was probably right after high school, Bob. My father was going at the time, he was working for the MBTA, and then he became a Boston police officer. And at that point in time, I kind of became interested in the law, listening to him about his cases and things like that. And so he always thought he would be a lawyer, but I think somehow he kind of talked me down that track. Even though, and most people don't know this, I went to a technical high school. I can rebuild your kitchen cabinets, but I
I
can
love it.
also sue the contractor who doesn't do a good job.
That's really cool. I like that. Now, in your area of the law, why did you choose that as opposed to something else?
Well, I suppose everyone would like a glamour story, but I'm going to give you the honest to God truth. I was married the first time. I had two kids and a wife, and I needed a job. And so, honest to God, I was offered two that paid exactly the same kind of money. The first one was to represent criminals. And I know how you feel about all lawyers, but anyway, criminals. And I decided that I would protect my family and go to the area of workers' comp and Social Security disability. So I learned that was the first job I ever got, was doing defense for a firm for workers' comp and Social Security back then, Murphy and Bean, which is still around. It's just more nationwide now. And I took that job, and I've been in the field ever since.
Hmm, that's cool.
Terrific. I did know that you'd worked in the construction world, Mike. I'm going to call it the construction world because we talked before about that. But and I love your honesty. You had bills to pay. You look at the two jobs. Which one do I want to go with? I want to ask you just a little bit about. So you worked at that firm. It's still around today. But I want to talk just a little bit about when you started, or when you made the decision to kind of go out on your own, uh, start your own practice. Right. That's a big leap. And for folks that might be listening to this today, they wonder how could I ever do that? So I want to ask you, what were, when you took that leap, that bet uh, on yourself. What were some of the key challenges that you faced when you were just like starting out?
Well, what was interesting when I first started, Dom, I worked for a big firm. I worked for a firm called Win and Win down in southeastern
Is that a
Mass.
joke? That's for real.
Yes,
It's not losers and losers, but win and win. Okay.
correct. So I worked for them, and I had 15 years under my belt. So I had a lot of clients. In fact, when I left, they thought that I had called my clients because so many of them came with me. I had about 110 at the time, and believe it or not, 108 came with me. Only two clients didn't come with me, and that's because they were friends with Tom Wynn, and so because of that, they they accused me of like trying to steal the clients. And I said, no,
Yeah.
you call it anyone you want. And
Yeah.
they all said that we had no idea he was leaving. So that was a good start to get out the door with a book of business.
Yeah.
And that was definitely a help. But the greatest thing about that firm was they would teach you how to network, take out people,
Yeah.
sit down with them, have a beer, talk to them about business and try to get business. So I kind of had that little help, if you will, when I got started. It
So
was
you,
uh, it was definitely helpful to learn, from some of the best.
yeah. So you're in that enviable position where you actually had clients that you could bring with you. And, this is something that I did. I worked in financial services. You take those clients with you, they're going to cut your hands off. You're just, sorry, Bob, no disrespect, but you're not allowed to do it. Whereas in the legal field, it's up to the client. So that was terrific that you were able to bring most of those with you. And
Yes,
you also you learned the skill of networking as well at that previous firm. So that
yes.
tell me a little bit about those early years when you started those firm. Like how did you find your clients?
So usually it was, back at that point in time, I remember I got a couple of very difficult cases that the senior partners said, this is difficult. This is a good case for you to get your feet wet
Yeah,
and you'll learn, from having some of the harder cases. And I did. I had a mentor, and anytime I needed help, I would go in and sit down with it, the mentor, and he'd say, hey, this is what you need to do. If you approach it this way, you got a shot at it. And I did win a couple of bigger cases that they were kind of surprised that I was able to pull it off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you learned from people a lot.
Yes.
You asked for help when you needed it, and you weren't afraid to kind of stretch yourself
Yeah,
and do
I
the
mean,
tough.
you can't be afraid to ask because
Hmm.
the one thing I can tell you that I did learn from my boss is if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah,
So don't be afraid to ask for help from anyone.
yeah. So that's great advice. But what happens when it's your own firm and you don't have anyone to ask other than yourself? Who do you ask when you went out kind of on your own?
So over the years, obviously, I developed friendship with some of the other people who were there and then left. In fact, I was the last one in the workers' comp department to leave. So I wasn't afraid to reach out to my
Yeah,
friends and say, hey, this is something new I've come across. How have you dealt with it?
yeah,
And we would just chat it through and figure out the best approach. And it worked well for all of us. So it kind of gave us a network without having to
yeah,
be in the same office.
yeah.
Hmm.
No,
Hmm.
that's great. I mean that thing of like not don't be afraid to ask, and when you don't know the answer, leverage your network to help
That's
you,
it.
and
Yep,
and uh,
exactly.
and that
Exactly.
and that's terrific. So for those, so how long have you been out on your own, Mike?
So I've been out on my own since 2002.
Wow.
2002. So my math skill tells me that's over 20 years, 20,
Yes.
20
Yep.
23 years. So if you were able to go back in time, right, and knowing what you now know, what might you have done differently? What advice would you have given your younger self in terms of the business, starting your own practice and building it and getting it off to the good start? Because obviously you're 20 years in now, you've been successful.
So what I've learned is what I should have done was have someone to do the things that I don't like to do. So, when you're on your own, you can take pretty much anything. But back then, I would take auto cases, I would take other
Hmm.
cases.
Hmm.
You have to write briefs, you have to do
Mhm.
discovery. Those are the two things that I hate. So I should have gone out and got a law clerk, someone who's
Yeah,
a little bit better at writing than I am to
yeah,
kind of fill in that little area that I really hate and procrastinate as much as I can before I have to do it.
Hmm.
yeah,
But that would be the one thing is to know your weaknesses and try to fill those gaps.
That's
yeah,
great advice.
yeah. We all have stuff that we are excited about doing, and then the other stuff, even if we're good at it, if we're not excited about it, like you said, you just procrastinate. It just becomes such a big hurdle. So if you can identify what those things are, and hopefully pass it to someone else, you can concentrate in the areas that you're excited about as well.
Yes. Yeah,
So
definitely works.
yeah, that's good advice.
That would be the best advice I could give myself.
And Michael, yours is a referral-based practice, right? You're gonna take people from referral sources. What's the best way if there's someone out there, maybe someone watching this, that feels like you might be helpful for them or a family member? What's the best way to be introduced to prospective clients?
I like the personal touch, Bob. People like try to send you an email with a contact. I'd rather just pick up the phone and call me, and you know, I like to hear the story from them instead
Yeah.
of trying to get it secondhand.
Hmm.
And I tell people I spend probably a good portion of my day, at least an hour or two every single day, giving people who I don't represent advice, to get them started. Because
Yeah.
I have, I tell people all the time, I have plenty of cases, right? I don't turn them away, and I don't need them. And I tell people, look, you can actually do this by yourself. And if you get stuck, then call me back and I'll help you. So, because I always say I don't need to have everybody's money. My wife disagrees with me, but so I'm often willing to help them get started and say you really shouldn't need me, but in case somewhere you get let down by the administration or by something that happens in workers' comp, then definitely pick up the phone and call me, and I'll help lead you through it. And if needed, I will take your case and help you get through the navigate through the steps of it.
That's great. And for those that want to call you, what should they dial, Michael?
781-251-0100. Nice
Great.
and simple.
Excellent.
It's been that way for 23 years.
Well, I mean, it obviously works, right? You've been successful. You've built your own practice. You have your own specialty. And, a couple of things there that you said that kind of resonate with me. You like to hear it direct. You want to talk, right?
Yes,
So people
correct.
that are thinking about, well, I'm scared about talking with a lawyer. When it comes to Mike Walsh, they shouldn't have that fear. You're approachable. You like to talk it through. Uh, and your thing, like you said, you got lots of clients. Very often, you're just helping people get started.
That's
And
it.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's so important because these systems are sometimes from the outside, unless you're in it every day, like you have been over your career. It seems like impossible to navigate, and sometimes it's what people need, right?
Yeah, and it's not just clients. Sometimes other lawyers who don't practice in this field are like, you know what, I'm lost. I need your help.
Yeah,
And so always willing to help.
yeah, and that served you well as well, with your
Yes.
network as well. So it kind of has worked both ways for you. But Uh, Mike Walsh, thanks so much for being on Missing Briefs today. Spend a little bit of time talking about your own journey and your practice areas and about how you operate. Thanks for spending the time with us today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So you've been listening to Missing Briefs, where we unveil the untold business stories of lawyers, their triumphs, and their trials. If you have an interesting story to tell about your own triumphs and trials, or of owning a firm, or perhaps you know somebody else that has their own stories that would also be beneficial to kind of share some insight with, have them get in touch with us. I'm Dominic Grew.
And I'm Bob Furlong.
And until we meet again.
Have a great day.